Welcome to the Mission First People Always podcast. We're glad you're here. And now our host, Dr. Mike Patterson.
It's Dr. Mike Patterson, your host of the Mission First People Always podcast, where we talk about what it takes to be a great leader and how to build a great team. One of my goals with this podcast is to inspire you with stories of people who overcame adversity, worked hard, played fair, made good decisions, learned from their bad decisions, and found a way to succeed. And I'm confident that today's guest will do just that, inspire you to keep pushing forward even when it seems impossible. In fact, I believe each episode of the Mission First People Always podcast offers unique value. So please follow us on your favorite podcast provider. We're on all of them. I don't want you to miss a single episode. Also, if you'd like what you hear on the podcast and you think it's beneficial, leave an outrageously good review to help other people find us, because those reviews matter. People look at them and they say, yeah, this is worth my time if it was worth his time. And of course, tell your friends, tell your family to follow and listen as well. Today's episode is a fascinating story of a man who found himself where he didn't plan to be. He's doing something he hadn't really planned to do and almost failed. But by the grace of God and the support of his family, he has become an incredibly successful international entrepreneur. It's the kind of story that someone in Hollywood could make a movie about. So all your screenwriters and producers out there, take note of this episode. All right, let's meet today's guest, Gerald White. I've known Gerald for 32 years, and we met just a few weeks after I had left the Army and a few months after he had left the Marine Corps. We became fast friends and have maintained that friendship over all these years and the many miles that now separate us. Originally from Texas, Gerald began his career as a United States Marine Corps officer and then transitioned into the world that became his life's work, the commercial side of pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and therapeutics. He has worked for TAP Pharmaceuticals, American Medical Systems, AstraZeneca Pharmaceuticals, and then started two companies in Southeast Asia, Edge Medical Devices, and now CardioSource Medical Equipment. Gerald White, all the way from the Philippines, welcome to the Mission First, People Always, Great Leaders, Great Teams podcast.
Well, thank you, Mike. That's quite a welcome. And it's my pleasure to be here. I'm nervous, but I'm excited to talk with you and share some things you may not know, even though I know there's a lot you know about my stories. So I appreciate you having me on as a guest.
Well, we're excited to have you. It's very early in Manila, so glad you're an early riser. I think that's a Marine Corps thing.
It is a Marine Corps thing.
So, Gerald, let's tell the audience a bit of your story. You were on a fairly typical path for the first 20 years or so of your career. Marine Corps, Big Pharma. Tell us a bit about that first half of your story, and then we're going to talk about it taking a big turn, but just get us up to that big turning point moment for you.
Wow, that turning point moment is more of a falling point moment. And I'll give you a metaphor. It's as if I was on this journey on an airplane with my family in tow, not just me and my career, because it affected my entire family. We're in this flight, it's at night, and the plane doors open. We were all brought to the door. We were kicked, not pushed, kicked off the airplane. And then after that, maybe 5 seconds falling, someone threw down 2 parachutes for a family of 5 and said, catch the parachutes on your way down. That's what it felt like. So that's the metaphor you're probably wondering as you're listening, because what is he talking about? I lost my job. I had a very good job and I felt like I was performing well. My boss told me I was performing well. The numbers told me I was performing well. The 360-degree feedback that I did with my team right before this kicking out of the airplane showed that I was doing well in all those key areas as a leader, strategy, the way I commanded the team, the sales results, etc. I lost that job. I was told that my boss told me he was losing confidence in my leadership. Wow, what a blow for a guy who had always been applauded for being a good leader.
And,
As I
and, and,
stated, go
and
ahead.
Gerald, let me just make sure the audience knows the kind of role you were in. You were a senior sales leader. You had dozens of people reporting up to you, maybe well over 100. Successful track record with a big pharmaceutical company that we'd all know the name of, as if we said it. And this senior leader, your boss, punched you in the gut, not literally, but it probably felt that way when he said, "I don't have confidence in your leadership anymore." That's tough.
It is very tough. And he, just a few months prior to him telling me that, he gave me a nice Hallmark card with a lot of handwritten things that he put in there. And one of the things he put in there was that he really enjoyed seeing my leadership grow in action. So I was very confused, as you can imagine. And I'm like, what? And I was like, where is this coming from? So we found ourselves in a situation where there was no income. My wife was 3 months pregnant at the time with twins. So I need to make sure I add that to the story. And as you know, when you're put in a position like this, you're thinking about all your finances. I was a good saver. Of course, I had my 401k and my other savings. I had invested in some things. And we lived in a beautiful neighborhood, Coto de Cagua in California. You'd been to our house before, Mike, for dinner, you and your wife, your beautiful wife. That house was foreclosed upon, from a guy who had great credit, prided himself on maintaining his credit and paying his bills. I paid that mortgage payment for 14, 15 months, even without any income coming in. And it was a big mortgage payment, as you can imagine. And so there we were getting all these phone calls from collection agencies. We were it was ubiquitous and just constant. And we avoid, now I know people who get those calls, why they avoid those calls and stop answering their phone. We found ourselves in that position and having to, think about, so how we're going to pay for this pregnancy. So we have to do the COBRA, which is very expensive because since my wife was already pregnant when I was terminated, it put us in a precarious situation, being able to shop for better insurance prices. So there we were, went through my entire 401k to sum it up, decided that I was going to start my own company. I didn't really look for work, Mike. Every now and then I'd get a little nervous and ask somebody, send me the name of a recruiter, things like that. You and I actually met in TGI Friday in Laguna de Miguel. I don't know if you remember that. And you gave me the name of, I think, one, maybe two recruiters. I really didn't do anything with that. And let me tell you why. I think that's a very important part of the story. You said it was like a gut punch. Yes, it shattered my confidence. It shattered not my confidence in myself. It shattered my confidence in what I was taught, which is what we're all taught. We're taught that you go to school, you get a good education, you work hard, you do the right things, you keep your nose clean, and you're safe and you'll have no issues in your career. As a matter of fact, usually that person that I just described to do those things will succeed. And up until that stage in my career, I had succeeded. I did very well as a Marine Corps officer. I thought I did pretty well in the pharmaceutical business as well, in the various roles that I had, from sales, training, marketing, etc. And here I am going, wow, everything that I did, I still lose my job. And my boss even said, this is not a performance issue. I go, okay. He says, you're performing well. It's just that I'm losing confidence in your leadership. And I think you lack strategic direction. And I'm like, I got to this stage in my career by lacking those things? I don't think so. And nevertheless, I lost confidence in the system. And the system that we're told, oh yeah, those things I just outlined will protect you, didn't protect me. So at age 48, I said, I'm not going to risk doing this again. And maybe 2 years or 5 years down the road, run into a guy who says, those types of things. I mean, I could go into some of the real reasons why this happened, the legal things, but that shouldn't be a part of this podcast. The story is that I decided that, you know what? I'm going to go out on my own, because that way I can never run into anything that's nefarious as to why someone's terminated me. Right. Well, I can never face that because I'm not going to fire myself. I said, I'm going to start my own business. And I started off on this track to start my own company. And it was supposed to start, I tried to start it in the US in California, and it was roadblock after roadblock after being promised several things. I was ready to go in the pacemaker, implantable cardio defibrillator business in California. The rug was pulled from underneath my seat at the last minute. So there I was thinking, I've got this business I'm going to start, put all this time and energy into it as my bills are still coming in and paying those bills. Then I said, okay, what am I going to do? And one doctor, Filipino doctor in California, I knew him when I was at my last company where I was a sales director. And you're right. By the way, I had about 100 people working for me. 9 were sales managers. And he said, oh, you should do this business in the Philippines. Forget about this company, Biotronic, in the US. And when he said that, I thought, and 2 weeks later, I was on an airplane with my pregnant wife at home, flying to Manila after doing some market research on what the cardiac rhythm management business was like in the Philippines. I pretended to be a market research company that I researched online, and I had their webpage pulled up. And when I'm calling these various hospitals in Manila, I wanted to be able to quote mission statement, the goals of the organization that I was pretending that I was working for, just so people would give me the market research data that I wanted to make the decision if the Philippines was a viable market for me to do pacemakers and implantable cardio defibrillators.
So
So I landed. Go ahead.
you were doing your investigation of the marketplace somewhat surreptitiously, using a bit of an undercover approach. I did not know that. Gerald, I think it's also helpful for the audience to know the time frame when all of this was happening. Wasn't it around the 2008 financial meltdown when this stuff was happening?
That's exactly when it happened. May of 2008.
So I just, because I was part of the story sort of from a distance, and many of the listeners will recall the challenges of 2008, all the people that were losing homes. You were in a very comfortable situation, living in probably the most comfortable county in the United States, Orange County, and you lost it all. You decided to go to the Philippines. When you went to Manila, looking back, do you think you were running to something or running away from something?
Wow. I like that question. I'm pausing, Mike, because I want to give what I think is the right answer. I think it's a combination of the two. And I feel like if I had to weigh them, I felt like it was more running towards something versus running away from something. And that something was, I had to take care of my family. I had one goal. I said, I need to fix my financial situation. So, because my wife was a stay-at-home mom. We had a 12-year-old son at home at this time, in addition to her being pregnant twins. And I said, this boy's got to eat. He's growing. He needs clothes. We need to eat, etc. I took my 401k down, which is a pretty good number at this point. I took it down to zero. So 48 years old, no retirement. And so I was running towards something more than running away from something. And that was, okay, I need to right the ship. The ship was listing, was taking on water. We were DIW, if you know Navy terms, is dead in the water. I need to get the engine started. I need to start moving forward. And, it's like, one of the things I learned in the Marine Corps was, every Marine Corps officer learns to be an infantry officer first, no matter what your job is. And my job was search air missiles. I was air defense, by the way. I went Hawk missiles and Stingers. And then they taught us in an ambush, first thing you have to do when you're being ambushed is to fight through the ambush. And that's the only way to get out of the kill zone. And I found myself in the kill zone, and I was like, I have to fight through it. So that's why I said it's more running towards something is the safety area, get out of that kill zone to find a way to take care of my family.
And eventually when you got to, I love the boat taking on water metaphor. And then when you got over to Manila and you got your family over there, it seems like you kind of burned the boats on the beach because you were committed at that point, right?
100%, all in. And that's the right word you use, committed, because you have to make a decision. And all leaders, whether they're battlefield leaders or business leaders or sports leaders, like Coach Wooden, which you and I are both a fan of his. When you're in these situations, you have to have incredible situational awareness. What is it that I need to do? So the landing crafts are on the beach. If I go back to military terms, and the door opens and you're like, okay, what do I do first? And I have to meet people. I know your podcast talk a lot about relationships, how leadership is about relationships. I would say becoming an entrepreneur is also about relationships. And you have to not be afraid and be fearless in everything you do. Let me rephrase that. You have to be fearless. That does not mean not being afraid. You will be afraid. Fearless means, in my perspective, you're afraid to do what you have to do anyway. Right? You get your butt up, you get your butt out, and you go do what you have to do. And I started going to the different hospitals, meeting the different people. I was pretty good at building relationships with people in the past. I'm likable enough where that was a strength that God gave me that I could utilize in this endeavor. And I went to the major hospitals that I'd called, introduced myself to people. And along the way, I think it's important to note that I still didn't have a contract with Biotronic to do the pacemakers in the Philippines. So while I was here, I called up Biotronic USA, who already turned me down and basically told me they're not going to give me a contract after all, along with another cardiac rhythm management company too. They said no to me. So I called the guy in Taiwan who represented Southeast Asia, the Biotronic person. And I said, I need you to come here to the Philippines and meet me because I think there's a market for Biotronic and you've never been here before. Meaning Biotronic's brand had never been there before. He was reluctant. He was, as a matter of fact, talk about fearful. He said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. He goes, but let me talk to my boss about it. I'll get back to you. So he called me back the next day and he said, Gerald, I know you're there and you're doing all this research and, but he goes, I'm not going to be coming out after all. And I'm like, oh my goodness, talk about it. Here's another blow, right? Slowing down what I thought was some momentum and an opportunity for me to at least right the ship. And he said, my boss told me not to come because I might get kidnapped and have my head cut off in the Philippines. And I went, what? I said, that's not going to happen to you. I said, the areas of the Philippines where you need to be concerned with your safety, we don't go there. We're not even there. And that's another island, farther south. Don't worry about it. I said, I'll make sure that you're protected. I'll pick you up at the airport, et cetera, et cetera. I stole this guy coming anyway. And reluctantly, he decided to fly out. He comes out, I take him to the hospitals. I show him the people that I met already in short order, key physicians that I met. And he said, you know what? He goes, wow, you've only been here several days and you've done a lot. He says, okay. He said, I think you have a good shot at getting the contract. He goes, let me sleep on it. He wanted to call his boss and he did that the next day. And he said, I got good news for you. It looks like you're going to get the contract. So there we are. I said, okay. So I felt like the engines of the ship were starting out. Okay, we need to do this. And so a few months later, I officially got the contract. I was in the Philippines 2 weeks that first time, flew back to the States, told my wife, and did get the contract, started the process of hiring people, had a partner, business partner at the time who was already in the cardiac rhythm management or pacemaker business. I thought I needed that. That ended badly. I ended up kicking him out of the company because he invested no money. So all the money in the company is mine, that we put into it. And, we started the business and we moved forward and, I was trying to run it from California, flying back and forth every few months to the Philippines. We were getting robbed blind. I can tell you as an entrepreneur, as a businessman here in Southeast Asia, it's like any market. Because Southeast Asia or the US or North American market. If you're going to run a business, you have to be in that market and live there. I was trying to do it remotely. It didn't work. And I could tell you when it's all said and done, we ended up saying, well, we got to move to the Philippines because we're not making any money or in putting in a lot of money into the company. But why, and we're selling product, but why is it that there's no profit? So even with the accounting firm we were using, outsourced, we realized something was going on. So I told my wife, we have to move to the Philippines with the move. Right now, in the meantime, I took a job with a special effects company in Alabama. So when our house got, ironically enough, talk about how God works, Romans 8:28, and, I wasn't even applying for work. And someone called me about this job opportunity in Alabama for this guy. He needed a CEO for this small it wasn't a startup company anymore, but this small special effects company because he wanted to sell it. He needed to get his EBITDA up. And really, the company wasn't very organized. And these investors were looking for more structure. And they saw my resume out there from space somewhere. And they wanted me to go to, interview with him. So I flew to Alabama at the same time while I'm flying back and forth to the Philippines every 3 or 4 months. I meet the guy, the small town. There were 800 people in this town where this business was. There was not even a traffic light that's red, yellow, green. It was just blinking a red light. And it was like this 10 warehouse building. And, I was at a point too where I was spending so much money in the Philippines. I said, I need some income. And we already got the notification. I went to move out of the house at the same time all this was going on. And I had $1,100 in the bank. And I thought, I don't even have enough money to fly my wife. And at this point, the twins were already born. My wife and these 3 kids, I couldn't even fly to Houston to stay with my family. And I was like, okay, we're just going to have to live in this car. My wife had a Cadillac Escalade. I said, well, it's a big car. Okay, maybe we'll just live in this car for a while until we figure this thing out. And so this Alabama thing came up. I got the job. We moved to Alabama as we're avoiding the sheriff kicking us out of our house in Coto de Casa. And so there we were to help him grow the business. And 6 months into it, 6.5 months into it, that job went away. It ended up being a very weird situation. He got rid of almost half the people that was on his team, me included. He made me fire them all, and then he fired me afterwards. And there I was in Alabama with twins. The twins were not even 3 years old yet, 2 years old. And I'm like, okay, so I started doing some consulting on the side for the guy you were renting the house from. He owns his own company. So my training background came in handy. And so I was developing some training, doing some consulting, that kept us above water. My wife, before we left California, started doing some interior designing because she took a 6-month interior design course in Newport Beach. So she made, a bit of money actually for someone who never professionally did that for a person who also had a home in Coto de Casa. They were very successful. They hired her over these big interior design firms. So the importance of having a partner like, I have and you have is very critical to our success. So she was there. Go ahead.
So Gerald, let me just make sure I'm tracking with you so the audience is tracking with you. Big traditional pharma job gone. Yep. 2008, housing crisis, lose a beautiful home, work through all your 401k money, take a job in Alabama, which seems like an interesting choice. And probably we could talk more about that. That job goes away. Wife is trying to help. You've got new twin babies, talking about living out of a car, started a business in the Philippines. You got lots going on and a lot of it's not going well. How did you have the strength to keep going? I mean, I mentioned a punch in the gut earlier. You've been taking some body blows for 2-3 rounds here at this point. How did you have the strength to keep moving forward?
Wow. I think the way I approached it, Mike, was this. I'm still alive. I consider myself a relatively smart guy. I've been successful before. I have a strong confidence in myself. And, one of the great things that I believe the Marine Corps and the Army, I would say, and all military branches teach people, and the Marine Corps is really known for this, is, they used to tell us when I was going to officer candidate school, If it's hard and you feel like you're going to die, just reach down and get some. And I literally would tell myself that, reach down and get some, just no matter what, you just keep going. And my wife and I had this mantra. We'd lay in bed, we're just thinking about the enormity of all of this and how we're going to get out of this storm, this crisis that we're in. We would say, failure is not an option. We would say it over and over, almost on a daily basis. Failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. And it made me keep moving forward, Mike, in spite of being in the kill zone, in spite of the body shots and all the Claymore mines get popped and all this adversity and one failure after another, one right after another. I just said, I have to keep moving. And, that spirit that was in me at that time is what drove me. I know a lot of prayers from my family before I was a Christian, but I know a lot of prayers from my family helped guided the way. And one of the things I've learned in business is as long as, and in life, when you're moving forward, you're getting through the kill zone, God always puts opportunities in front of you. They do manifest. They open themselves up to you. And you have to have the situational awareness and to see it and to go, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing now, and go in that direction. That's what I did.
So in the early days, so let's get you over to the Philippines, working in your business, which seems like an enormous risk in itself to move your young family over to a new country where you really didn't know a lot of people, but you're working in your business, lying in bed at night saying, we're not gonna fail. How did you learn and evolve in this new market, this new world? Because I mean, there's a lot to your story. You've been over there 15, going on 15 years, I guess, at this point. So you've done a lot in the Philippine market, but how did you learn and evolve? I think that's an important question for entrepreneurs who have to respond to the market and respond to the conditions they're in. How did you learn and evolve in a very different type of market? How did you do that?
Well, the fortunate thing about the Philippines is in business, for sure, everyone speaks English. So that certainly helps facilitate anything you need to do business wise. At least you have a common language. So how did I evolve? Mike, what we learn in the military is go back to your training. Go back to your training. You fall on your training, the things that you learn to do in various situations. And the pharmaceutical business, I will really say TAP for sure. One of the great things about TAP is TAP set a good example of what good leadership is. They really did, because the culture told me that. The results over the years told me that. And I borrowed. So how I evolved is I just borrowed from things, experiential learning from the Marine Corps, from TAP Pharmaceuticals, from American Medical Systems, even, AstraZeneca, things I learned about myself or about what others are doing. And, in your podcast and in your book, you talk a lot about learning in relationships. So I evolved by making sure that I cemented the right relationships here in the Philippines. I evolved by continuing to improve not just my experiential learning that I had before and using them, but my current learning. I never stopped learning. I read books on leadership, on strategy. I never knew about Michael E. Porter's Porter analysis and the 5 market factors. And I said, man, had I known this stuff before I started this pacemaker business here in the Philippines, I would have never started it. It's no wonder that the pacemaker business that I did here, although we were in business from 2000, technically, legally from 2009 to 2017, it was a roller coaster ride, more down than up. And eventually we went out of business for that as medical company. So I evolved by, there's some fundamental foundational things you have to make sure that you do, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're working for an organization. And I just fell back on that training and that experiential learning and future things that I had to learn that I shored up that I like operationally. I didn't know anything about operations per se or the financial side of running the business. It's all new to me because even though I had a team of approximately 100 people at AstraZeneca as a sales director, those jobs, when I look back on it, are easy. Those are easy jobs. because the only thing I have to be responsible for was sales. That's it. So the organization had systems and processes, an HR department, a finance department, a regulatory department. So I had to learn about regulatory stuff. I knew a little bit about it because I was in marketing at Tappan, with work with regulatory, but that's different. Even marketing is different. I worked in marketing for 13 months at Tap. The way big companies, pharma companies do marketing, you use ad agencies to help you. You have people like brand engineers to help you with the branding. When you're an entrepreneur, and the way I evolved is I couldn't hire brand engineers. I couldn't hire Abelson Taylor or McKinsey, McKinsey Associates. I couldn't have them on my second floor advising me, consulting me on marketing issues and things I should do. You're on your own, right? And I have to evolve by learning those things like that I didn't know about branding, positioning. How do you establish a brand? How do you go to market, pricing, operational things, regulatory things, because you have to register all of those products that I sold, my company sold with the FDA here. And it's a long process and it's arduous. And you'd be like, really? It's already FDA approved in the United States, but the process here, the paperwork. So I had to learn all of these different things. So my evolving required me to go into areas that I never even imagined and really understanding how to manage a business financially as well.
So,
Profit and loss, et cetera.
so Gerald, and I wholeheartedly understand and appreciate what you're just saying. And I know we've got a lot of small business people in our audience today. I have become a small business person dealing with things that I haven't had to deal with before. And there's a lot of new things that you learn. What's one lesson you wish you would have learned sooner? So let's turn back the clock 15 years ago. So you're new off the boat, or the plane, I guess is more accurate, in the Philippines, starting your business. It's give or take 15 years ago. You're a younger version of Gerald at that point. What advice do you wish someone would have come along, put his arm over your shoulder and said, hey, buddy, pay attention to this? What would that advice have been?
Wow. Okay. I would probably say to be less in this market specifically. I would say be less trusting of everything you're being told, and make sure that you are, like Ronald Reagan said, trust and verify, that you are inspecting diligently everything that you expect. Inspect diligently everything that you expect. Because if I had done that earlier on, I would have saved myself a lot more money. I would have lost money still, a lot of money, but I would have lost less money.
Gerald, I'm a big fan of your wife. You and she and your entire family have been in our home, and we love your wife. What role did she play in your success?
Michael Jordan wouldn't have been Michael Jordan without Scottie Pippen. And the role that she played in my success was I needed someone to do those other things on the team, because we're a team. I needed someone else to do those other things to ensure our success. I don't know how much of a basketball fan you are, but it's been said often that Michael Jordan wouldn't be the Michael Jordan with the Chicago Bulls, and the Chicago Bulls and Phil Jackson wouldn't have had the success they had with Michael Jordan if there was no Scottie Pippen, right? So my wife, she was there when I needed encouraging. She was there when I needed someone to complain to, when I needed someone who truly could understand the emotional torment that I went through, especially because she's aware of the reasons I really lost my job. And it had nothing to do, as they say, with performance or anything like that. But I needed someone to be my support system, to take care of the household. And even further, I would say about my wife, what I needed was another set of eyes and another set of ears to make sure I was reading the situation that we were facing in business the right way. And there were several examples where my wife said, you know what? This is what you need to do. Now, keep in mind, my wife, I met her in the Ukraine. That's where she's from. And she spoke no English when I met her. She was a nurse, scrub nurse in the orthopedic unit. So she had no pharmaceutical background. She had no military officer training. She'd never been in sales. But yeah, she was giving me sales advice, business advice, when she had no experiential learning in those areas. And I would listen to that and go, she's right. So that second set of eyes, the second set of ears, that second situational awareness, being in tune with that and giving me stage advice always at the right time, Mike. So her role was, we wouldn't be here if she had not said and done the things that she did. And we don't have enough time to go into all those specific things. But let me tell you, I thank God that I have that woman.
Amen. God blesses us with good wives. Hopefully he also blesses us with the good sense to listen to them. Gerald, what's the future look like for you? I know your current business is quite successful and becoming more successful. You just finished a strong year. You're adding headcount. You're growing your team. I saw some photos from a national sales meeting that look like you were doing it first class. Just give the audience a bit of a glimpse into your current business. We talked about the rough times, the rocky road, but you've persevered. You've gotten to a place that's quite a bit different. Tell the listeners a little bit about that.
Yes, we are definitely in a much different position as a company. If I can just rewind just to hear, Mike, and then I'll move forward to answer your question directly. So we have to shut the doors on the pacemaker business and move full-time in the current business, CardioSource Medical. I started CardioSource Medical at the same time I was still running the pacemaker business, with the goal being to augment the pacemaker business. We were trying to find more pacemakers through the diagnostic business. So our current business, we focus on diagnostics. So we have 24-hour ambulatory blood pressure monitors, 24-hour Holter monitoring, and of course, can be up to 72 hours. We added 4 years ago ankle brachial index diagnostic product for peripheral arterial disease diagnosis. And then we have spiral spirometry. So we added that on the respiratory side. And that was at the request of one of our customers that wanted us to get into that respiratory business. And so we decided to move forward with that, and it worked out quite well. So you saw our kickoff meeting, you saw we did do it first class, and you were at a 5-star hotel. I wanted to reward my staff, even though the year it didn't hit the goal or our quota, but the pandemic really put a hurt locker. That's a Marine Corps deal. Put a hurt locker on our customers' business. So whatever happens to your customers happens to you. They grow, you grow. They decline, you decline. And that's what happened with us during this pandemic. Things, even though we didn't have the year we wanted to have last year, we had a good year by financial metrics. And so looking forward at our business, one of the things company, if you're not growing, you're dying. I don't know where I heard that, but I heard that somewhere years ago. And so in our effort to make sure that we're growing and not dying, we decided that we have these opportunities in front of us with what we refer to as our allied customers, our top 4 customers, in the pharmaceutical space. That's my background, as it is yours. And diagnostics was not my background. So we thought, well, it's a good opportunity now to move from just diagnostics into therapeutics with the same customer base. And so that's what we're going to be doing this month. And we had some technical issues in terms of platforms that were being built for the doctors to be able to e-prescriptions and things like that. So there's a whole IT issue that we have to get through with one of the partners that we're using. We signed a contract last year before the delays, the technical stuff, with a pretty large pharmaceutical company here. And the president of that company is a really dear friend of mine. and he's a cardiologist. And his story is quite a unique story, Mike. I would highly recommend him on your podcast as well. They've got quite the story to tell. And now they started their venture and their business with a group of cardiologists. It's a heck of a success story. So moving forward for CardioSource Medical, we decided that in addition to growing the number of clinic customers we have, we focus in the multi-specialty clinic space as well as the ambulatory surgery centers. We don't focus on hospitals or private doctor's offices. The reasoning behind that, because the patients all have HMO cards. We've got built-in doctors and built-in patients. It's much easier for us, unlike the pacemaker business where patients have to pay cash. The insurance companies don't pay for that here. So it was a difficult business for us, the pacemaker business. And so this CardioSource Medical, moving forward, is going to be a complete continuity of care organization opportunity for our customers, the physicians and the clinics. And I don't know what else we'll get into aside from other diagnostics, I'm sure at some point, but the therapeutic side is something that we're moving fast and furious with right now. And I will add this as well. When I say I don't know what other thing we'll get into, I do know that. As a matter of fact, we are going to be we're going to be launching a mobile clinic business at the behest of one of our other partners as well. And so I'm already looking for these mobile clinics to buy. And we hope to have a fleet of those at some point. We're going to start with one or two I'll buy this year. They have to be retrofitted with X-ray machines, ECGs, portable ultrasound. So, you have to buy all that equipment. And our business model is we don't sell anything. And I think it's important for your audience to know. We don't sell anything from a guy who spent most of his career in selling. We do what's a very unique thing here in the Philippines. It's called a tie-up. And what we do is purchase our company, CardioSource Medical. We purchase all of the equipment. I didn't know that I would be the owner of so many things. Computers, we've got over 100 computers for our staff, that you have to own. For cell phones, I buy all these cell phones for all my employees and pay the cell phone bill. For our customers, we buy all the ambulatory blood pressure monitors and the Holters and the ABI. And if you can imagine the cost, I think at this point, we have over 500 devices, 8 ambulatory blood pressure monitors, and almost equal number of Holters, if my memory is correct, something like that. And there's an entire device inventory management system that has to have to be in place to manage all this equipment. So we have to create our own IT department to create a device inventory management system. So our company, CardioSource, moving forward, is going to continue to evolve in terms of our commercial aspects, diagnostics and therapeutics, in terms of more clinic customers we bring on, but also the way we look and operate, our operational prowess, which we have to shore up and we continue to develop. I'm excited for the growth that's, for our team. We are continuing to look for top talent, to develop our people, train our people. And culture is one. I've tried to mimic TAP's culture. It's impossible. There's a one TAP. There's never going to be another TAP. But I'm very pleased when I look at the culture of our company. Unlike Edge Medical, the pacemaker company, CardioSource Medical has as close to that TAP culture as I can possibly get without being that TAP culture. And so I'm so proud of my team. I'm so proud of the things that they've done, overcoming a lot of adversity we have to deal with in the marketplace, being able to grow in spite of the pandemic. We continue to improve in everything from operations to sales to marketing, clinical knowledge. It's just a great place to work. And that's what I want it to be moving forward, a great place for people to work.
Gerald, you have come a long way from the young single guy I met 32 years ago to the guy who lost his home potentially living in the back of a car, to a guy that's built businesses and now is building an incredibly successful business in the Philippines. There is a lot of growth there. I warned you that when we're out of time, I'm going to ask that one final question, or this is actually the penultimate question. Give our listeners one thing they can begin doing today that will make them better leaders? What's your answer, my friend?
I love the question. As I listened to your other podcast and I heard the responses, and they were all great responses, which you can all learn from. For me, though, the answer to that question is simple. For leaders, if you're in the sales organization, and I would say it probably is true for service organizations and different types of organizations. If it's a sales organization that you're leading, no matter what size team, whether it's a district, a region, either national sales director or the CEO or president of the company, you have to make sure that you understand that the sales leader's job, if it's a sales leader, is not grow sales. The service leader's job is not to necessarily improve service. Your job is to develop your people. When you develop your people to do their job the best they can do. So if you have a salesperson working for you, you develop them to be the best salesperson they can be from every aspect of sales that you have to focus on, from relationship building to probing to objection handling, you name it, to benefit selling. If you're on the service side, the same applies. If you're in operations, I tell my operations manager, it's the same. I tell my operations manager, develop your people. I tell my IT manager, develop your people to be good at their soft skills, right? They have to be able to do this. They have to be able to do that. When we do that as leaders, Mike, we're able to sit back and watch these people grow in ways that make us proud and make us smile. And it makes our ability to do what we're committed to do ultimately, which is grow the sales or grow the revenue. That stuff comes automatic without you having to focus on it. So develop your people sales leader to do their job the best they can do it. That's my one bit of advice.
Well said, Gerald, and very consistent with what we tend to talk about here on the Mission First People Always podcast. Thank you for being a great guest today. I've loved reconnecting with you and hearing your story. And if we had another 2 hours, we'd fill it with good conversation. Friends, all of Gerald's social links, as well as information about his company, will be in the show notes. I encourage you to connect with him. He's out there on LinkedIn. Check out his company. They're doing really great, unique work in the Philippines. And I hope our audience in the Philippines grows as a result of this episode. So let me close this episode with my take. If you would have asked me to predict where Gerald's career would take him, there's no way I would have said, well, Gerald is clearly on a path to become an international entrepreneur. But that's exactly what he did. Sometimes we need to leave the path we're on, or sometimes we have no choice because we get pushed off the path by circumstances or people, and we've got to find a new path, a road less traveled. But what I've learned is that people have an enormous capacity to reinvent themselves. They take that pain and they package it in a way that allows them to go in an entirely new direction. They adapt, they overcome, they improvise, they keep moving forward one day at a time. It's rarely easy, and yes, there is the possibility of failure, but those who persevere and push through are almost always rewarded with the satisfaction of knowing that they did their best. They overcame the negativity and naysayers to achieve something that is both purposeful and filled with meaning. And sometimes they even find material success as well. For some, the mission is clear. They know exactly what they want and how they're going to get there. For others, there's this general directional sense or a compelling need, like I have to feed my family, and we go off and we figure it out. But there is one thing that's consistent, the absolute necessity of building solid relationships and treating people with dignity and respect at each step along the way if we want to find that true success. Success isn't very sweet if we leave a wake of brokenness and pain in our wake. Success is much sweeter when we have people in our lives that we can share it with. We've got teams of people we've invested in and developed, and we enjoy it all together. Mission and people always travel together. Please join me and my guests for every episode of the Mission First, People Always, Great Leaders, Great Teams podcast. Until next time, keep pressing forward and maybe try something new.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to create a stronger, more people-centric and empowered culture for your organization, visit drmikepatterson.com.